One call has the power to change our life forever. It can transform us from the inside out and lead us into a new future. Whether or not we answer the call is up to us. God calls each of us to something greater than ourselves. We're called to impact our world with the message and love of Jesus Christ. Equipping us all with gifts and talents, God gives us the tools necessary to accomplish His will. For God's gifts and His call can never be withdrawn. Hearing God's voice can be challenging. It doesn't always come as a loud ring, but it can come as a whisper. Even when we don't feel God is speaking to us, He's there. Be the change you wish to see in the world. This statement is true, but an even greater truth is, be the change that God calls you to be in the world. Will you answer the call?
God is great. That's kind of the message you get over and over the Bible, that God is great. He is higher than me. And really, through faith in Jesus, when I look to Jesus and I know what God means for me, what I recognize, and kind of connecting with that video, I recognize that the higher calling I have in life really is to love my neighbor. And it's not always an easy thing. I don't know about you, but I sometimes find myself getting really worn out by life's activities and some of the expectations that come along. I think for me personally, of being a father, a husband, a pastor, many other things, and as a result, sometimes I fall short of loving my neighbor appropriately because of my own attitude about it. Have you ever felt that way? Like, I know I should do something for this person. I should be there for them. And maybe you've failed epically. I've failed in some pretty horrible ways in my life, and a lot of it has to do with just poor attitude. Earlier in the week, I suffered from a nasty case of strep throat, and I would recommend taking medicine. We've been talking about this quite a bit today. Actually, people have been like, glad you're feeling better today, Pastor. I'm like, yeah, medicine helps. It's a lot better when you actually go to the doctor rather than talk about how, I'm good, I got it fine. So I ended up being on basically taken out of commission for probably about 4 days. But I feel kind of pathetic actually talking about that, because I know some people around here have been taken out for much longer for that than that. Like Jack up here, for an example, much longer than that for much worse things, much more serious things. But for me, sometimes like getting sick and then not getting much sleep because I was sick, it just kind of one thing after another, and you find yourself not being a very pleasant person to be around. Lots of things can contribute. So I don't know what it's been for you in your own life. What it is that tends to wear you down and tends to get in your way of relationships with other people. And maybe it's simply just been bad choices that have really hurt other people, and now you find this big gap between you and others, or a specific person, because of something you did to them. And maybe you're feeling like, I'm just giving up on even trying to approach that person again. And so the parable of the Good Samaritan, which we're going to touch on in a second, is a great way of, when I'm trying to figure out who in my life I've been called by God to love and to serve. And what I mean by loving and serving is seeking their greatest good. The greatest good really is sharing God's love with them, sharing Jesus. Okay, that's the greatest thing I can do for my neighbor, but it's also caring for their needs, looking outside of myself. Next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking a lot more about growth. And when I think of growth, I'm thinking more of how that message of Jesus and God's love actually has an impact on my life, and it manifests itself outwardly. Okay? So, going to make a list. Who are the people I should be seeking to love and serve more appropriately? Think about that in your own life. What does your life look like right now? Good place to start is this reading in Luke. When you're trying to think about this, and maybe your attitude towards others, maybe especially people you're struggling with, maybe if you're struggling with somebody today. Jesus ran into people all the time and just had a poor attitude when it came to others. He constantly ran into people who were trying to justify their behavior, and they wanted Jesus to approve of it. okay? Prove of their poor attitude. So it says, and behold, the lawyer stood up and put Jesus to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? So he starts off with just saying, how should I behave? How should I live my life, Jesus? And Jesus replied by saying, what is written in the law? So what does it say? What does the Bible say about this? How do you read it? And he answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind. Okay? So that's basically the first three commandments. The first commandment is you shall love Lord your God. Okay? Nothing else can save me other than God. Okay? And so I'm worshiping or looking at something else for ultimate meaning and purpose in life, I'm breaking that commandment. So that's what that means, that I should have no other gods. Okay? So starts off with, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. That's where we start there, because only God can save. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's the second part. And if you're familiar with the 10 Commandments, really Commandments 4 through 10 really are all about loving your neighbor in different ways. Okay? So this is a summary. And he said to him, you've answered correctly. Do this and you live. So love God. Understand that God is the only one who can save you. And with that in mind, seek to love and serve your neighbor. Good job. You got it. All right? But now the lawyer's kind of thinking to himself. He's like, all right, well, that's great. But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Do you understand what he's asking in this question? Who is my neighbor? Basically, he's trying to get off the hook. Let's define neighbor, Who would that be? People I like, people who are nice to me, people that we get along with, And specifically in this person's case, in this lawyer's case, he would be thinking, okay, I should be loving other Jews like myself. But when it comes to people who are outside that group of people, it doesn't apply to them. That's what he's thinking. So he's trying to justify himself, and he's like, Jesus, who is my neighbor? And he's waiting for Jesus to say, Jewish people, nobody else. That's kind of what he's doing. I'm simplifying here, but that's basically what's going on here. And Jesus replied, and so Jesus, this is what oftentimes what Jesus does, instead of directly responding, he tells oftentimes a story, in this case a parable, to make a point, to make a deeper point. And there's a lot going on here, so I'm going to hopefully help you kind of follow along here. But he says, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now, traveling from city to city in those days was very dangerous. If you went on the road, it was not like today where like, hey, I want to go shopping at Novi. I have enough gas money. Okay, I'm going to head over there and shop. And you get in your car, and the worst thing you have to worry about is maybe getting in an accident. And it's only 20 minutes, But, for Jesus' day, it was incredibly dangerous. You were vulnerable. It was a long period of travel, and robbers would wait to catch people on the side. Because there weren't policemen or anything to protect you. So you go out on the road, you're vulnerable. Okay, and so this would have resonated with this lawyer. Okay, that happens all the time. People get beaten up, left on the side of the road all the time. Possessions taken away. Okay, so he's half dead on the side of the road, just beaten up. And everything taken away from him. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that road. And so as soon as the lawyer had heard this, a priest was walking by the road. Well, priests, they're like the top people, okay? These are like the people everybody respected, okay? These are the guys who make sacrifices to God and make things right, make sacrifice to atone for sins or to cover up the sins of the people. And so priests were considered, important people. So surely the priest would stop because, he's a good guy, okay? Well, what happens though? The priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So he saw him, passed on the other side. Doesn't say why, but I would suspect, the priest might have thought, I got other things to do. I'm kind of busy today, maybe something like that. I don't know. But the priest, of all people, sees him, passes on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed on the other side. So a Levite, one of God's people, once again, okay? From the priestly class also, too, descendants of the priestly class. So same category, basically. You'd expect that this guy would stop. It's one of his own people, almost dead on the side of the road. You think he'd stop and try and help him out? No, of course he doesn't. He sees him. What does he do? He passes on the other side. All right. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was. So now a Samaritan, these Now a lawyer heard the word Samaritan, it would have been like, okay, yeah, these are scum. Because Samaritans, they had a bone to pick with the Jewish people because like a lot of Jews saw Samaritans as kind of like, lack of a better term, dirty Jews. Because what they did was they basically worshipped at a different location. And they were kind of intermingled with other people. And so Jewish people separated themselves from the Samaritan and saw them as less than. And so when the lawyer had said, who's my neighbor, Samaritan would have been one of the first people that you would have thought, well, surely he's not my neighbor. He's out, okay? And so you can see what Jesus is doing here. A Samaritan came, okay, and as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, what did he do? He had compassion. He saw this man half dead on the side of the road, and his heart opened up to this man. Okay? And I'm not just saying, he didn't just feel bad for him, okay? He actually took action. All right, he went to him, bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him, okay? So you see, he took care of his wounds, and then I can't just leave him on the side of the road. He actually takes him to an inn, okay? And basically pays the person there so that this man can rest and recuperate, okay? And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. All right? So he really goes above and beyond to care for this man that he didn't even know. And this is an outsider, okay? And now we get back to Jesus and the lawyer. Which of these 3, the priest, the Levite, the dirty Samaritan, do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? And he said, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, you go and do likewise. That's a question I think we all need to ask sometimes. When you're seeking to justify your own attitude or behavior towards other people, who are you trying to exclude? Who are the people that you struggle with? Much like that lawyer, in what ways do you sometimes find yourself only wanting to love the people who give you stuff, who do things for you, and exclude the people who you feel sometimes maybe like a burden? Or maybe people that, like I said, there might be some hurts there, and it's just easier not to interact with them. Who are those people? Because that's what the Samaritans were. I mean, for a Jew, for that lawyer, those Samaritans they were beyond hope reaching out to and talking to and serving and loving. But Jesus is saying, no, that's not how things work. That's not what I mean. That's not what God means when he says, love your neighbor. He doesn't say, love your neighbor except the people you don't like. Or love your neighbor except the people who don't always love you back the way you want them to. You see? Think in your own head. Who do you tend to justify your negative attitudes toward? Honestly, sometimes it's just easier to walk away from people and not even, just isolate yourself from others. I don't know, I find that to be the case sometimes. Like, I've had struggles in my own family. Some here know specifically even what some of those struggles were. And I've found that just like with this lawyer, that when it comes to family and struggling with relationships and, when there's brokenness in a family, it's not always as easy to walk away as with like a friend. I can walk away from a friend, but family, it can really hurt. And you can try to walk away, but that hurt still kind of lingers because they're blood. You're related to them. And if you're in that boat today, if there's someone that you really deeply care for and you feel like there's a gap between you and them, whether it's family, friend, someone you're in a relationship with, I want you to know that I feel for you. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I guess the question to ask is, if you have somebody, and if you have people that maybe your attitude isn't the greatest towards, the question to ask them is, what motivates me to love my neighbor? I want you to think of this. I kind of walked through the whole parable of the Good Samaritan. And I think the nagging question for me as I read that parable is this: who is the Good Samaritan? Okay, I know he's a Samaritan. Jesus is making a point. But in the parable of the Good Samaritan, who is the Good Samaritan? Because Jesus oftentimes makes connections between God and different characters. And who is the Good Samaritan? You see, Jesus himself is the Good Samaritan in the story. How many of us in this room, I'm guessing, have found yourself maybe feeling like you're beat down and broken, maybe half dead on the side of the road? You found yourself at the end of your rope, and it just feels like nobody will reach out to you. And what Jesus does, really, the mission that Jesus had was not to serve himself, was not to lift himself up with a crown that the world would be proud of. Instead, Jesus came to pick us up, to see us dead, half dead, beaten up, broken on the side of the road, and to look at us and to say, yeah, you're a disaster, but I love you. I love you, and I'm here for you. My mission, when my Father sent me to this world, my mission was to save you, was to have mercy and compassion on you, even when you're not having mercy and compassion on others. Even when you're treating other people as though they exist to serve you, to serve me. And trust me, I fall into that boat all the time. God says that really, ultimately, the motivation to love my neighbor, especially my attitude is to look at the cross and understand the length to which God, who oftentimes we think of as this distant being that doesn't care about me, look at the cross and what you see is you see God. If you can believe that that's God, that's the extent that God went to show compassion and mercy on you and me. And when Jesus looked at that lawyer then, and he said, go and do likewise, do you understand the power of that command? Give of yourself for others, just as I have given myself. This is, I came to give of myself for you. It's hard sometimes to come across unconditional love, you know? It's amazing when you see it in a marriage or in a friendship, and I've seen that here, where people, like, you know, we've had our ups and our down days, you know, some of you, you know, you've had, and I know some of you, you've had some long ordeals, and yet there have been people who've been there for you, who've walked with you through it, who've listened to you and showed compassion to you. And you see, when we do as Jesus did, what happens is we begin to recognize the power of the cross and the reality of God's love and his forgiveness. Because you see, I can't see the forgiveness that God offers me, the love that he offers me through Jesus. I can't see it. It's true, but when others are loving me, that reality just explodes. The reality just explodes, and it tends to disarm me. I don't know about you, but when other people love me, my barriers tend to come down. Like when I'm being a total train wreck, it's funny, like I'll come home some days with a horrible attitude, absolutely awful attitude. And Megan will, you know, not all the time because sometimes I can get annoying, but sometimes come home and, you know, she'll, and you know, give me a hug or you know, say, I got some food for you, you know, already set out for you, you know, just something little like that. It just kind of disarms me and takes some of the edge off, you know. So Jesus is the Good Samaritan. And the command is to go and do likewise. And that's the command we have in mind when we're making a list of people to love and serve. Where do I start? Where if you're thinking about somebody maybe you could, and I would challenge you to think of people in your life maybe that you could seek to love and serve a little bit better, or maybe you could have an attitude adjustment towards them. Maybe think of some people who could be blessed by a community like Genesis. Where do you start? Do you start with your resentment and anger? No, the starting place first really is to start at the cross, to see how God relates to me. That's where I start. I start by saying, this is how God relates to me. Unconditional love, mercy, and compassion. That's God's attitude towards me. And so then I look at my life and what I do, and you can do this very simply. You could write, we've done this in Bible study before. You could actually draw a cross in the middle and start drawing some circles around that cross. Who are the people who are closest to me in my life? Are you married? Do you have children? You know? That might be a good place to start. Do you have friends? People that are an encouragement to you. People who build you up and share God's truth with you, you know? Those are some other people. It might be good to love and encourage. Think of people who have encouraged you and find opportunities to encourage them. Maybe continuing beyond that. Do you have people at work that you spend time with? And when you go to work, what's your attitude? Do you look at those people who are working with you and be like, we're just coworkers, whatever? Or do you look at them and do you actually listen to their stories? And do you find opportunities maybe to share Jesus with them? Or just simply to serve them and go out of your way to be kind? It's crazy what that kind of stuff does. That's what I want you to think about today. Who are your Samaritans, if you will, the people that you push on the outside? Who are those people that you struggle to have a good attitude towards? And remember what Jesus says the starting point is. We start with him. He is the Good Samaritan. We go from there. We seek to go and do likewise. And what I'm going to do in just a second is actually I'm going to pray that God would give us the strength maybe to do that. And it can be in big ways and small ways. And I would say that another way that we can love each other is simply right here in Genesis Community. Look around the room. When the lights come up and when we go to different tables, look around this room. Do you see somebody in this room that you haven't met before or haven't talked to in a while? Go up to them. Introduce yourself. Start a conversation.